Welcome to this episode of Against the Mountains of Madness. I'm your host Jason, and
I'm John Wright.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Marvel, Wokeness, and the death of the Muse. So, I've enjoyed more of Marvel Phase 4 than you... Well, enjoy. I've watched more of Marvel Phase 4 than you have, John. But you are...
Would you say you have suffered or endured more of Marvel Phase 4?
Endured, that's a good word. Apart from Spider-Man No Way Home, I was not a fan. Spider-Man No Way Home was a work of art, but the rest of it, a lot more hit and miss.
Here's what's outrageous.
Sure.
When Marvel first started their cinematic venture, Marvel Comics themselves were in decline, the written comic book. At one time in America, it was in every 7-Eleven. It was in every. It was on the spinner rack in every drugstore, and everyone under 14 had read at least one or two comics, and a lot of people read them obsessively. During the 80s, a lot of those people aged, and we got into an entire new kind of genre or generation of comics, sort of more realistic, more nitty gritty, more dark comics that dealt with more mature themes. And you saw kind of a blossoming. I won't call it a golden age. That word I would reserve to the early comics. Let's call it an iron age. Our bronze age, an epic age. So when the comics came into the movies, it was a big risk because the movie makers decided to make separate movies for each of their main Marvel characters, Captain America, Iron Man, and so on. And they were kind of betting the farm on it. You see. Iron Man was played by Robert Downey Jr., and he was recovering from a self-imposed kind of funk, kind of a bender, and they were taking a risk with him. They didn't know if he was going to work out. He turned out to be perfect for the role. The guy they got for Captain America turned out to be perfect for the role, and he was a honestly good all-American boy that just turned into, Then they got Chris Hemsworth to play Thor, and he was perfect for the role. And they started doing things like Ant-Man, which you would think would be ridiculous. Who wants to go see Ant-Man? It was a great film. It was funny. It was hilarious. It was a quick action. Yeah. Okay. So then they decided to bring them together into a team book, which is the way the comics did it back in the day. But no one in film had ever done such a thing before. Okay, it was as risky as filming all 3 episodes of Lord of the Rings all at once. You see. Not knowing if the first film was going to flop or was going to succeed. So Marvel did really risky things, and they paid off brilliantly.
To the tune of
I remember back in the day when they did not used to put Easter eggs behind the end credits, but that was a Marvel innovation. Okay? So, Marvel became not just my favorite, but many people's favorite movie franchises.
I enjoyed
and even people who didn't like superheroes at all and hadn't read the comics in their youths. We're charmed, we're enamored by it. But then something went wrong. And at first, I was hoping it was just a wobble, that they would straighten up and fly right, that they would realize where they were going. But no, they doubled down. They went worse and worse. They started swapping out everyone's favorite characters for really lame, usually female substitutes. They stopped telling stories of heroism and started telling stories of, I don't know what, wokeness. They started, as a technique of spreading the word about their film, as a publicity technique, attacking their fans beforehand and saying it was illegal for us, unlawful for us to dislike their crap. That if we did that, it was our fault because we were bigots and haters.
Apparently.
But I'm your paying customer. I'm your boss. I'm your fan. And I used to be a very loyal fan. I would have crawled through broken glass for them. I would have watched anything they put out. Now you could not pay me to watch anything they put out because it's all atrocious garbage. And they did it to themselves. It wasn't caused by some historical, economic inevitability. It wasn't caused by the rise of the internet or the moons of Jupiter or the change in Wall Street. It wasn't caused by any of these things. It was caused by a deliberate policy of trying to promote a certain political opinion, wokeness, self-congratulations, rather than tell stories. Now, why did they do that?
Who knows?
Who can say? And they denied. I mean, they denied they were doing it when they did it. And it happened one step at a time. And people warned them when it was happening. Now, I myself, I'm not sure I could say where the line was crossed. I don't know if I could pick the film.
Captain Marvel.
That was the last one I picked, but maybe you can tell me.
When
did it start to go south? What was the last film that was good?
Leaving aside Spider-Man No Way Home, Endgame.
Yes.
Endgame was the last good Marvel film.
You're right. And the one before that, Captain Marvel, I didn't see.
You didn't miss very much.
Because I thought it sounded like it was going to be terrible.
It was.
Because it's not the real Captain Marvel. The real Captain Marvel is a guy, is a space alien, who betrays his home planet because he falls in love with Earth. Female Captain Marvel is a woman who got a blood transfusion from him, and she never really had any personality. She was Ms. Marvel for a while, then she was Firebird. I mean, she was Warbird. She was a number of things.
Okay.
Not a major character. Marvel in the comics tried to make her into a major character, wagging the dog by the tail by insisting that fans loved her. No fan loved her. She was about as famous as Nighthawk, who you remember from the Defenders, a guy who takes a serum that makes him strong at night, and he wears a jetpack under his hawk suit. You don't remember him? No, because he's a C-lister. You don't remember Ms. Marvel? No, because she's a C-lister. She's a nobody. Okay? When they took the Guardians of the Universe, which I read as a comic, I knew they were C-listers. I knew they were nobodies. But they turned them into something really special.
The Guardians of the Galaxy are great, yeah.
The Guardians of the Galaxy, they were wonderful. I knew who Drax the Destroyer was. I knew who Glamour was. I knew who all those guys were, They did a bang-up job with those guys. So I knew they could do it when they put in the effort. But they didn't take the Raccoon and Groot and say, you're a villain if you don't like this film. You're a bigot if you don't like this film. They bothered to write a film.
They made a fun movie. They made a fun movie.
I did not see Captain Marvel. Did you see it?
Well, we watched it before Endgame because we thought, we'll watch it for the sake of completeness so that this character's in it, so we want to know who this character is. Well,
she was the only thing in Endgame that annoyed me.
Fair enough.
Because when Thor says to her, I like her, she had not done anything likable up until that point. The scene where she saves Tony Stark from death in space, I thought was impressive. I liked her at that moment when she appears as a glowing angel to save him. And then she's arrogant, has no interesting backstory, has no interesting personality, has nothing really to give to the group effort.
She doesn't.
And is not someone that we've been friends with for 10 films.
No.
There's no scene of her like as when Captain America is attacked in an elevator by Hydra agents. Okay? There's no scene of her having arguments with her father about her stepbrother and being condemned to live as a human. I mean, there's no scenes of her blowing up all of her iron suits because she realizes his life has taken a bad spin. She wasn't human.
No.
So I thought she was the point at which it started to go bad. But Endgame was not bad. Endgame was still good despite her.
Yes. I was going to say...
And then after Endgame, it started to nosedive.
The Captain Marvel character in the movie gets her powers from an exploding engine. She absorbs the power of it or something like that. Sorry, it's a bit fuzzy. And then gets her brain washed and is working for the bad guys hunting the Skrulls. And the movie's all...
Who are the good guys in this film? The Skrulls are the border jumpers, the wetbacks that we're supposed to admire and like now.
Yeah, somewhat.
Because in the Marvel comics, the Skrulls are the ultimate bad guys.
Yeah.
They're horrible shape changers who kill people and replace them.
Yeah.
And they try to frame you for their crimes.
I guess part of the problem Marvel's got at this point is they told the story, they got to Endgame, and they told a massive 20 film story arc that was amazing, and now they're sort of out of ideas. They don't know where to go, and they're flailing about. I
sincerely doubt it. They had 70 years at least, maybe 50 years, maybe 70 years worth of material on which to draw.
That's true.
that they could, and they decided to draw on the material from the recent Marvel comics after it started losing readers hand over fist, not from the Silver Age of Marvel comics.
That's true. There was also licensing problems because Marvel Films had sold some of their characters off to other studios to get money, so that's why you can't have the Fantastic Four. They fixed that now because Disney's bought everything, but they can't have the Fantastic Four because they don't have licensing. It took them a while to get Spider-Man because Sony had the rights to Spider-Man, provided they churned out a film every so often, and you can't have the X-Men and you can't have mutants because Fox owns that. Although again, Disney solved that problem by buying Fox Films, and but now Disney can't make a film to save its life. Disney lost $500 million last year, apparently, something crazy like that. Or the film industry lost $500 million.
They used to be the best storytellers in the North American continent, bar none. Pinocchio, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Sleeping Beauty, absolute classics that can draw a tear from the heart of a grown man, and mesmerize children with their depth.
And then films like Aladdin and
Lion King was one of the highest grossing films of all time. It was animated.
And I love Aladdin. I only actually saw that in the last few years. I'd never actually seen it when I was younger, but Michelle insisted I watch it, my wife, and
she's right to do so.
It's a great film. It's a really awesome film.
Robin Williams started a program of rewatching the Disney films in order with my youngest son, and he's old enough now that we can actually discuss the art, the direction, the plot, the setting, and so on, the themes. And you think you know the story of, let's say, Snow White. You don't really know the story. It's much better than you think it is, even with the comedy relief dwarves. Because Snow White is charming beyond belief, and she has a certain moral authority to her that allows her to tell crusty old miner men when to have to brush their teeth in their hands, and so on and so forth. And there's a religious element to the fairy tale, which is unmistakable to grown-up eyes, And the witch's hatred is so great that she turns herself into a hag. She destroys the beauty that is the source of her jealousy of the younger girl. So things like that are just brilliant storytelling. And then they make Strange World that no one goes to see.
Yeah. Ugh. Yes.
And parts are just disgusting,
And Lightyear.
So
totally unnecessary film.
Totally unnecessary film.
But no one watched. Well, some people did.
No one watched it. And old Disney could have made it like Falling Off a Log back in the day, Because they had respect for storytelling. They had respect for the Muse. But now they're serving someone else, not the Muses. I don't know who they're serving. So they Marvel decided to make Captain Marvel a major character by fiat, by forcing fans to love her.
No one does.
And so when the movie makers decided to follow suit and give her own film, they gave her own film before they gave it to Black Widow, who was everyone's favorite character,
Which is, a much beloved character, and should have had her own film, and then they made her own film, and it was awful. It was stupid, painfully stupid.
Were there any good male characters in the Black Widow movie? Was Red Guardian any good? Anyone?
He was comic relief, as far as I could tell. I got to be honest. I've watched the Black Widow film once, and
that's fine. That's one more time than I did.
It was forgettable. Like it just, it wasn't.
Why was Taskmaster a female in that film?
I don't know, but I mean, it wasn't the original Taskmaster character anyway.
No, the original Taskmaster is a scary villain. Let me tell you what he is. He's a guy who's got photographic reflexes, which means if he sees you do any physical action with your body, play a piano, ride a skateboard, shoot an arrow, throw a punch, he can mimic it perfectly. So he walks around with a shield like Captain America's shield because he's watched Captain America on film. He can mimic all the guy's moves. He can do everything Captain America can do. He's got a hammer. It's not a magic hammer, but he can mimic Thor's moves even though he's not as strong as a god. But he's still rightfully scary. He's got a lasso. He can do lasso tricks. He's got a bow and arrow. He can do what Hawkeye does. Okay, he's a legitimately scary villain. There are villains that if you walk up to a hero and the hero runs away, you think, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Who's running away from, like, the hedgehog or the porcupine? They're ridiculous character villains. There's a character called the tarantula with pointy shoes, a Spider-Man villain who kicks people with daggers in his shoes. Stiltman. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not okay to be afraid of Stiltman. But Taskmaster, I don't care who you are, he can defeat you. He can mimic your mimics and beat you up. So they make him into a girl. Why?
It's just a character in a scary mask. I don't know.
Right. There's no reason for it.
And
it's not the first person. It's not the first person they made into a girl for no reason. I was a fan of Doctor Strange. When they made a Doctor Strange movie, I was on cloud nine. They turned the Ancient One into a girl. Why? Was it because the Red Chinese didn't want to have an old Tibetan man? Was it because having an old Tibetan man, which is a stock character of every adventure story from the pulp era, was considered racist? But then why is it not racist to take the Oriental man away and replace him with a Scottish woman? How is that not racist? What are the rules here? Why do it? I think they put in Tilda Swinton because she had played the White Witch in the Narnia movie. She did an okay job acting, but the dynamic was not the same. It wasn't the way it was in the original.
Did you enjoy the Doctor Strange original Doctor Strange film?
Yes, I did. They were true to the original story. They made him arrogant at first and learn better. They had in the scene where he operates on himself using astral projection when his body is unconscious and he's standing like a ghost next to himself. That's from the original. That's from the comic. Okay. They did a number of things that were from the comic. What they did not do is they didn't have Baron Mordo. Baron Mordo is an Eastern European German occultist.
Okay.
He's not a cool black guy, and he wasn't this impressive great guy. Now, I could see what they were going for. They were trying to make the two guys friends and then have a falling out. They did not have the idea that the Amulet of Agamotto was a time traveling device. That's new to the film. But I thought they handled that very well, and I thought that Doctor Strange was correctly upbraided for toying with forces he didn't understand, because it's supposed to be one of the dangers of magic.
Mm-hmm.
Visually splendid. I was really looking forward to the sequel, but I didn't watch it. I saw the commercials for the sequel. I saw that they were not doing a sequel to Doctor Strange. They were doing a sequel to WandaVision.
Yeah.
And I didn't see WandaVision. I wasn't interested in WandaVision. WandaVision was a show about a woman overcoming grief. It wasn't a show about... I mean, did you see it? Tell me what it was like.
I watched WandaVision. It started well. I enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed the I enjoyed the sort of premise of she's taken over this town and they're going through they're sort of moving through different ages of television as the plot advances. I thought that was nice. That was an interesting mechanic, but
sure.
But right at the end, it just sort of got Skybeam fight at the end. It was whatever. It was, the ending was all right, but right at the end, there's a really, I think disgusting is the right word for it. Cat Rambo turns up, and she says to Wanda, who, to be clear, has taken over this town of people and is puppeting them and controlling them to be part of her story. That's what she did. Enslaved all of these people, and they're suffering enormously while this is going on. It turns to her, and when she lets them all go, says they'll never understand what you gave up, because she gave up her imaginary kids and her imaginary Vision husband. And it was like, no, she should have given that up. What she did was, I mean, like, she was the villain here. Okay, she was in grief, she was misguided, things got out of hand. It's understandable, but she was doing the wrong thing, and she stopped doing it. she shouldn't be treated as the heroine for stopping doing evil to these people. Like, it just annoyed me so much. That line at the end.
As it should, because a superhero comic or superhero movie has a very definite protocol, which you cannot break any more than you can have a detective story with no answer to the crime, or a love story where the guy and the girl don't get together. Okay, you can write stories where the guy and the girl don't get together. They're called tragedies. You can write stories where the crime is never solved. They're called, I don't know what, nihilistic pieces of garbage.
Yeah.
A story where the hero and the villain are one and the same, the hero does villainous acts and is not punished, is not a story about justice. The reason why we tell these stories about justice is because there's not enough justice in real life for us. And the reason why comics are so popular is because kids want to see the basic idea played out, that something supernormal, supernatural, if you will come to our defense when all human hope has fled. That's a very important lesson. Okay? As I think it was G.K. Chesterton who said, it's fairy tales are not so that kids believe in dragons. Kids know that there are monsters in this world. It's so they'll believe in knights.
Yes.
So they'll believe in the shining knight.
So the dragon,
okay?
They know
well,
dragons
that's what
can
the
be
superhero story
slain.
is for.
Yes.
The story where a woman deals with the grief of loss of her loved ones is a nice hallmark story, is a nice idea. The fact that she has psychic powers and is bending reality around her makes an interesting science fiction story. An interesting Twilight Zone episode. But in the Twilight Zone episode, Billy Mummy is the bad guy.
Yes.
Okay? If you know what episode I mean.
I do. Or we should, for our listeners, I forget the name of the episode, but a young Bill Mummy is a kid who just can wish whatever he wants to happen, and he's.
It was based on a short story called "It's a Nice Day."
Okay, and yes, and there's an entire town of people that are basically enslaved by Bill Mummy because he will wish them away to the cornfield if they're not happy, and aren't nice to each other, and it's a really creepy episode that they reprised.
Right.
In the 1985 Twilight Zone, where they got Bill Mummy back as an adult, with a daughter with similar powers, but creepy episode. Right.
Well, WandaVision. I didn't watch it because I understood that it was not a superhero comic. Okay. That character, whoever she is, that's not the Scarlet Witch I know and love from Avengers. Okay, the Scarlet Witch I knew and loved from Avengers would never do that. Even from House of M or one of those comics, the story where grief is the enemy is not a superhero comic. It's not in the genre. Now, I don't mind if they're trying to push the boundaries of the genre, but if they want to tell a science fiction story, why don't they get their own characters? Why are they imposing on me to use my characters to tell a Twilight Zone story? See,
that's true. But I watched WandaVision. That's all right.
WandaVision was where I started to just not be interested in watching their.
That's fair enough.
Now, what about Winter Soldier and Falcon? Because Falcon's a favorite character of mine, but I also didn't see that one. How was that? Did you see that?
Yes, I saw that one.
I couldn't help but notice you flinched when I asked you the question, sir.
It's not. It's all right. It's kind of interesting. It's 8 episodes. It's 8-hour episodes of show. It probably could have been a 2-hour movie. Probably would have been better as a 2-hour movie. There's a lot of fluff in it. And it's got some really just tedious scenes towards the end. With Black Hawk. What is it? What's the character?
Falcon.
Sorry. Takes the shield and becomes the new Captain America after a disastrous run with a white guy taking the shield, who goes on to become U.S. agent. And he's lecturing a senator about needing to do better, and it was terrible. So it's not completely unwatchable. It's not She-Hulk, shall we say?
Not completely unwatchable.
It's not completely unwatchable.
There we go.
But it's not great.
But what was going wrong? Because I think what went wrong with I didn't see it, but I think what went wrong with WandaVision is the writers wrote themselves into a corner that they couldn't get out of.
Maybe.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they had made the girl a bad guy, and the proper resolution of that story is that she's imprisoned, killed, or reformed, or she sacrifices herself trying to save the town that she had been in.
But they couldn't do that
after she comes to her senses.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Okay, but that's not what happened.
No.
What happened is a moral inversion where she's told she's the good guy and congratulated.
Well, this is actually interesting with WandaVision. There's an FBI agent who's leading the team outside, trying to work out what the heck's going on in the town, and he's sort of, they want him to be the bad guy, but he's not the bad guy at all. He's trying to save a town full of people from this lunatic woman that's controlling them all.
I have a theory as to why woke people can't write stories, and I'll tell you later on after we investigate a few more of these.
Well, okay.
So what went wrong? Or I can tell you now if you're curious. What went wrong with? But I want to ask what went wrong with Falcon and Winter Soldier, because those are good side characters. I don't know how well they do without Captain America there myself. I've never really in the comics they never really. I like the movie version of Falcon better than the comic version of Falcon.
Fair enough.
In the comic, he has like a psychic pet. In the movie, he's like just a straight up soldier man.
Yep.
And I like soldiers because they do their duty and they're brave.
It was.
And I love the mechanical wings. I thought they were great. One of my favorite scenes is the fight between him and Ant-Man in the Ant-Man film.
Oh yes. Because
he's actually a pretty tough customer, but Ant-Man manages to not get killed fighting him.
It just, I don't know. It just wasn't great. It had some woke, preachy stuff in it.
Preachy.
That just automatically just irritates you, or it's reached the point where it's just automatically irritating, and the plot was kind of flabby, and I don't know. It wasn't unwatchably bad. It wasn't great. It was just average.
Like I said, I haven't seen it, but no one has told me about it. Has ever told me who the bad guy was during the 8 episodes. Who was the conspiracy? Were they trying to fight AIM?
No,
or Hydra? Or someone interesting?
They're fighting a group called the Flag Smashers that want to that seem opposed to the
evil patriots.
Well,
were they wearing red hats?
No, but they were trying to. The Flag Smashers, if I recall correctly, the problem is it's the post-snap world where the snap has been undone. Now there's all of these people who have come back who want their stuff back and things like that after 5 years of being away, and there's a global administration that's trying to sort it out and is making a hash of it. Well, it's a difficult problem.
Now that's interesting. That sounds like a good premise. The post-snap world. I mean, that sounds like it's a source of real conflict.
But the Flag Smashers...
There's no easy answer for that one.
But the Flag Smashers are the bad guys because they're standing against how the administration is doing things, because they're doing things they really hate. Like, well, these people are back. Well, I've been living here for 5 years. You need to go somewhere else now. They want their house back and things like that. From memory. It's a bit all over the place. And then they try to replace... Sam doesn't want the shield at the start, so the big story arc is him becoming worthy of becoming Captain America, of Falcon becoming Captain America, and there's a side one where they have USA.
I haven't seen it, but I can't really object to that because in the comic he does become Captain America. And U.S. Agent is another attempt to use the super serum, and it turns out badly.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's all from the original comics.
No, I mean, as I said, you might give it a watch. You might actually not find it completely awful. The Hawkeye, we watched the Hawkeye one. That was alright. I don't know. Everyone complained about it because of the female Hawkeye character, but I got to be honest, I only really know Hawkeye from the movies, so. I'm not that...
Hawkeye from the book is very different from Hawkeye from the movies.
I'm not that invested.
I like Hawkeye from the movies a lot better because he's a family man.
Oh, yeah.
And when the snap happens and his family disappears and he turns around and sees his daughter evaporate, that's one of the most heart wrenching moments in the cinema.
Oh yeah.
In the comic, he is a carnival sideshow guy who is jealous of Iron Man and says to himself, "I can become a superhero." And gets a bunch of trick arrows and goes out to try to do it.
Okay.
He's not doing a great job at being a superhero, and the Russian spy gets him. The Russian spy, Black Widow, tricks him into attacking Iron Man because the Russians are out to get Iron Man. And then he turns over a new leaf and becomes an Avenger.
Okay.
But he's basically a petty crook with a chip on his shoulder.
Okay.
He's trying to compete with his bow and arrow against people with real superpowers. Very interesting character, and I like him a lot. He's got a mouth on him, too.
Okay.
But I like the guy in the movie a lot better because he's a family man, see?
No, fair enough.
And in the continuity of the movie, he turns into, like, the ninja in Japan and is a cruel vigilante. And I was so offended with the character of Kate Bishop from the comics that I was not willing to give the TV show a chance.
Fair
I
enough.
wasn't even willing to watch a single episode.
Fair enough.
Because I started keeping count. Tilda Swinton's the Ancient One. She-Thor is replaced for Thor. Okay? And it's not the girl from The Mandalorian who looks like she could actually handle being a Marine. I can't think of her name. I'm drawing a blank again.
She was Starbuck in the Battlestar reboot. Katie Sackhoff.
No.
Oh, okay.
Jane Foster is played by...
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
fashion
Natalie
model.
Portman.
Natalie Portman, who's gorgeous. Okay. Sylvie replaces Loki in the Loki TV show. Agent Carter replaces Captain America. She-Hulk replaces Hulk. Okay, they don't even... Riri replaces Iron Man in the latest movie.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen.
Shuri replaces Black Panther in the latest movie.
I haven't seen the latest Black Panther yet.
Layla. Now, even a character as obscure as Moon Knight, and I was sure I was the only guy who ever even heard of Moon Knight before now. Okay, have you ever heard of him?
I
read him.
I didn't mind that show actually. I thought that was fun, but apparently they
I
brutalized
thought the
the character.
was kind of wild, but Layla turning out to be better than him at his own job offended me.
Fair enough.
And the Wasp being a better Wasp than Ant-Man's an Ant-Man also.
Yeah.
That's a little more understandable because she's the scientist's daughter and he is just a bumbling, he's just a crook.
Yeah.
Who got the ant suit. So sure, maybe. But now, and 3 of the Eternals were swapped. Ajax, Makari, and Sprite were swapped for the opposite sex.
Have you seen the Eternals? It's not.
No,
it's,
nor will
it's
I.
dumb.
And I can tell you why.
It's just tedious.
Because I was a fan of the comic book.
Fair enough.
The comic book is wild, man. The comic book will blow your mind because it's Jack Kirby took the idea of ancient astronauts from Von Donigan and said, what if the ancient astronauts really were gods, Aztec gods, or celestial beings, and they're coming back to judge the Earth, and no one knows why they're doing it.
Okay.
And what if mankind is not the only race that they elevated to sapience? What if there's other groups of mankind too? People who cannot die, who were worshipped as gods by our primitive ancestors, and deviants who were the devils of our ancestors. So that's the setup.
Okay.
The deviants were a race of intelligent beings like the Inhumans. They weren't just CGI monsters.
Okay.
I heard so many bad things about the Eternals movie that I'm not willing to give it a chance.
We thought we'd give it a go.
They turned one of my heroes into a bad guy.
Fair enough. We gave it a go, and it's a mess.
Well, tell me about it. How does it go? How does it work out?
The Eternals turn up. You meet the Eternals at the start, and they're there to shepherd and help humans along. But you learn later in the film that actually their goal is to raise humanity to sapience, to get enough sentient people on the planet so that the
Celestials will wake up?
Celestial will wake up and destroy the planet.
I've seen the episode. So they take out a cookbook and it says "To serve man," and it's a cookbook.
No, but and then
another Twilight Zone episode ending.
Well, yes, but then
another twist ending.
They rebel against
because because the Eternals are not the bad guys in the original.
Well, they're not. Well, they rebel against it and they kill the Celestial and stop it being born. But there's some argument.
I'm sorry. If you're a fan of Jack Kirby, the phrase "they kill a Celestial" is like saying they slap around Galactus. That doesn't happen in the comic.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry. It's like beating up the monolith builders from 2001: Space Odyssey. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
You're not going to find the monolith builders and slap them around.
No, I get it, but I mean, it's just, and the film's a bit all over the place. They kill him at the end, and then go on to go to.
Wait, they kill an Eternal, or they kill a Celestial?
They kill the Celestial. They stop it being born, and then go on a quest to stop this happening again, and I don't know, something like that. We watched it once. It was boring. It's a dull film.
You know what I would have done if it had been mine to do? I would have, if and I had the rights to it, I would have had the Fantastic Four introduced and had the Watcher on the moon be one of the people watching the human race develop for the Celestials. I'd have the Watcher be working for them, because that would be interesting, because then the Celestials go from world to world creating races. And the races that are too perfect are supposed to be like the Kree, and the races that are too chaotic are supposed to be like the Skrull. And there's even a theme that runs through Marvel Comics to that effect.
Okay.
That there's a cosmic evolutionary arms race going on between the chaotic and the lawful races, and mankind is the only hope of resolving it correctly, because we have to learn how to square the circle.
Okay.
They didn't do anything like that, so well, why bother?
Did you watch?
And also, they didn't bother to think through how to fit the Eternals into their continuity.
No.
Because everyone who I saw review the movie went, why didn't they try to stop Thanos? What were they doing?
Particularly because Thanos set their project back significantly.
Yeah, by killing half of their subjects.
Did you see the Loki series?
No, I did not see the Loki series, and I would have liked to, because I liked the character. I thought he was amusing. I thought he was terrible. But when I heard that they had him replaced by a female who upstages him easily, and then he gets slapped around, and then he's not the god of mischief anymore, I said,
Yeah, I thought Loki was. I don't know.
Oh, and one of my favorite villains, Kang the Conqueror,
sorry?
turns out to be some sort of bureaucrat or something.
Sorry, what?
Is Kang the Conqueror the bad guy in that one? The time traveler?
There's a cat.
Did you see it?
I've seen it. I've watched the series through, but it's kind of forgettable towards the end. But there's a black guy who's the master and who sets up the temporal agency that stops divergences and erases them.
The black guy was blue in the original, and his name was Kang the Conqueror, and he was a time-traveling supervillain who was the enemy of the Avengers.
Okay, no, this black guy at the end is overseeing the multiverse and he's destroyed the multiverse and made the single continuity and made the temporal enforcement agency, whatever they're called, to keep things on track, to prevent the multiverse, because the multiverse is a problem. There's a lot of words at the end. There's a lot of exposition that just words.
Yeah. The character is supposed to be Immortus, who is supposed to be either the descendant or an alternate version of Ramatut, Doctor Doom, and Kang the Conqueror, Marvel's three time travelers.
Okay.
And in the comics, it's rather clever, because you don't really know who he is, or that he used to be a bad guy and is now a good guy. He's now trying to protect the time stream.
Okay.
And he lives in a place called Limbo, which looks like an Escher drawing of a castle that has roofs pointing in every direction.
Yeah, they did do that. It was...
good. Okay. They kept some of the ideas from the original.
They did. Loki was all right. Yeah, I watched Hawkeye. As I said, it was okay. Hawkeye wasn't... And I liked Moon Knight. That was fun too. But I don't know these characters from the comics, so... what else?
Well, so what... But do you see a trend... What leads to She-Hulk? What makes it so? How do you go from Winter Soldier, which is okay, to Loki, which is confusing, to She-Hulk, which is horror on burnt toast?
We tried.
Just terrible in every dimension.
Everybody hated She-Hulk. We thought we'd give it a go, and we got through one episode, and it was just painfully dumb.
Did you like the scene? I haven't seen the show, but I've seen the clip of when she's upbraiding Bruce, her cousin, for not being able to control his anger as well as she does. And she loses her temper while she's saying this.
Oh my goodness.
Because she's a woman. Did you see that scene?
It was, yes. That scene is in the first episode, the one we watched.
Is it as bad as it looks in the clip?
At least. It's just...
In the original,
what is wrong with you?
She's dying. In the original, she gets wounded because she's shot by a criminal. Bruce Banner gives her a blood transfusion to save her life, knowing his blood is radioactive, knowing that he might poison her. But it's either that or death.
Yeah.
So when she turns into the She-Hulk, he feels really guilty. Okay? But then in the John Byrne run of the comic, she finds out she can turn into a gorgeous 7-foot-tall Playboy model who's as strong as the Hulk, but is an absolute babe, okay? And she stops and talks to the camera, and she runs into amusing C-list and Z-list villains, like the mole people of Mars and so on. And she runs into Dr. Doom, who is the second cousin of Victor Von Doom. This Dr. Doom is a dentist living in Brooklyn who wears a skull mask, okay?
Okay.
It's that level of humor. She's kidnapped by the mole man and be forced to marry him. Okay, and the mole man is like 4 feet tall and she's 7'2". Okay? It's hilarious.
Okay.
It's lighthearted. It breaks the fourth wall. It uses a lot of obscure characters. I could see they were trying to capture some of that magic. But the original John Byrne She-Hulk is cute. It's a cutie pie. She's feminine. She's adorable. Okay? She also can throw a tank through a brick wall. Okay? But she's still a cutie pie.
I didn't get far enough into it. I heard snippets about the rest of the series, and it just sounded abominable. So it didn't seem
I heard
worth
about
watching.
the ending was that they were making fun of their own robotic writing by having her break the fourth wall,
Yep.
climb into the writer's room, and the writers turn out to be a robot.
Something like that, yeah. And
Okay?
it's just...
Now, if the fans hate you for your robotic writing, I'm not sure that joke is gonna land.
No. So, yes, She-Hulk, which apparently has been cancelled. They're not getting a second season.
God is merciful.
But, that being said, for all of the horror of Phase 4, I watched the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, and that was wonderful. I mean, it was ridiculous, but
Tell me about it.
It has a wonderful song in it with some aliens that have gotten some Earth instruments and learned to play them, by an actual band named the Old 97s, who are obviously quite talented musicians. But the alien is trying to sing Star-Lord a song about, or sing Peter a song about Christmas and make him feel at home. But he's learned about Christmas from all of the other characters.
Oh, because he's lonely at Christmas,
yes,
he's not on Earth,
because he's lonely
right?
at Christmas.
And so his friends want to help him out,
Yeah,
right?
but they sing
Okay.
a song about Christmas, which starts off right, and then just goes completely off the wall because he's going, Santa's a master lockpick and is great at breaking into houses, and if you've been a bad kid, he'll shoot missiles at your toes, and it's like it's a confused understanding of Christmas on the level of the Japanese having a crucified Santa in the window. And it's wonderful. The song just, I love the song. It made me laugh so hard. I added it to our Christmas playlist.
Now I understand that they also try to kidnap Kevin Bacon,
yes,
because they had heard he's a great hero
because
from Peter Quill's stories about him.
Peter Quill, speaks of how
Quinn, is it Quinn or Quill?
Star-Lord, Peter. We'll just call him Peter.
Star-Lord.
But
everyone's got code name. That's not abnormal.
He's told them about the movies that Kevin Bacon's in, like how he saves the town in Footloose and things like that.
Right.
And Drax and Mantis get the idea to travel to Earth and get Kevin Bacon for Peter as a birthday present, and it's ridiculous, but it's really fun. And Mantis mind controls Kevin Bacon to make him think he's the hero he really is, the hero they think he is. So he's actually dealing with this complete madness after just being terrified and running away, because he's an actor. He's not a hero, he's an actor. And then Peter's there going, "Oh, can you remove the hex from him? Now just stay calm and don't try to run away. It'll be okay." And he's trying to reassure him and comfort him. And then they take the hex off him and he runs away in terror. And but eventually it all comes together and they have a nice Christmas and Kevin Bacon gets returned home. And I just thought it,
and they all realize,
I just thought it was wonderfully
fun.
It was silly
and they all realize
but
they hate
perfect.
And they all realize they hate actors.
Well, yes, yes. But it was I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. They can still tell a fun story when they just go to town. And I didn't.
So why can they still tell a fun story and they're deciding not to? With Spider-Man: No Way Home, I know they know how to tell a good story.
Yeah, because that was
seen them do
that
it.
was a masterpiece.
Why are they not doing it? What are they trying to do instead?
I don't know. You mentioned the Muses. What are the Muses?
The Muse
You're a
is
writer.
your innate sense of life.
Okay.
That allows you to put into words things that can't normally be put into words. The Muse is different from a. Socrates said he had a spirit called a daemon. It sounds like demon, but it's a different type of thing.
Yep.
The daemon was Socrates' spirit that could allow him to tell right from wrong by questions and by use of his reason.
Okay.
But a muse is something else. A muse comes from the heart. A muse comes from the soul. It comes from we know not where. It comes from the place dreams come from.
Mm-hmm.
And so muses allow you to try to capture in words an image or a vision that portrays an entire world of meaning in as few words as possible. Okay? That's why the parable of the prodigal son says a lot more than a newspaper report would say of merely a kid who didn't obey his father and wasted his money.
Mm-hmm.
See? So any story, a superhero story, has levels of meaning. It has a theme. It has character development. It has other things that portray not just your sense of life, but what you perceive of reality around you. And when a story is done well, the artist carries an insight with him that gives you the audience, a deeper appreciation for reality. Even a lighthearted story like a superhero story about bad guys defeating good guys. Because sometimes having good guys defeat bad guys is the most important thing in life that you're going to be doing. Look at World War II, for example.
Yeah.
So the thing that can kill that off is first being too literal, and second being too deliberate. Trying to use the muse as a tool instead of serving the muse as a messenger. When you try to use her, when you try to adulterate her, you turn her into a harlot for money or for your political purposes. So then you're doing propaganda, you're not doing art. Art is when you serve beauty to try to invite beauty into the world. Or insight. I mean, art doesn't need to be pretty. You can tell a horror story. But it's got to be gripping. It's got to touch your soul. And if it's a horror story, scare your soul, but it's got to touch the real you. It's got to get to the core of your being if it's going to be real.
Yep.
Propaganda tries to approach the outside and wag the dog by the tail. It's trying to manipulate you. You become the patient as the viewer, not the actor. When I, as a poet, when I, as a novelist, write a novel, I'm inviting you to enter into my world. It's sort of like a voluntary auto-hypnosis where you put yourself under a spell. You trust me to lead you through a mutual illusion, a dream, a hallucination, to show you something that's real, but that I can't show you in the waking world. I can't show you in the mundane world. And sometimes I have to do it in symbols. I have to use dragons and unicorns to show you the nature of greed or the nature of purity. I have to show you heroes so that you will recognize what's heroic in yourself or in others. So when I'm woke, however, my view of reality is divorced from reality. When I'm woke, I'm thinking of myself, not of you. I'm thinking of me showing off, not of you and I together finding beauty. I'm trying to stuff my ideas into your brain up your nose. I'm not trying to lead you to the promised land like a guide who himself doesn't necessarily go into it. Okay?
Yep.
That's the difference. And a poet is like a prophet. He's trying to lead you somewhere. He's trying to point to something. A narcissist, a wokeist, a Gnostic is trying to point to himself. He's trying to become like a god and create things by fiat. He's trying to break the rules. A poet tries to obey the rules. When I write a sonnet, it's sonnet length. It's 14 lines. When a wokeist writes a sonnet, he makes it 12, 13 lines. And they don't rhyme. Okay, and they don't have meter. And they're not in English. And they don't have punctuation. And he capitalizes all the vowels and uses small case for all the consonants. Why he's doing this? Because he is a transgressive. He believes that breaking rules is virtue. Doesn't matter what the rules are.
Well,
Just he thinks that life has constrained him and that to be free he has to break the constraint. He thinks the seatbelt is a handcuff, so it's to break the seatbelt. He thinks the guardrail on the highway is a prison wall, so it's to break through the guardrail. So he unbuckles the seatbelt and drives through the guardrail.
And goes
Now,
over a
does he
cliff.
get to? And he goes over a cliff. Okay? Because what he's trying to do with the art is what the madman is trying to do with the car. He's just trying to transgress the rules. So instead of having the love story end up in love, he has the love story end up in some sort of sexual perversion. Instead of having the detective story defeat the bad guy, he has the bad guy told, oh no, they will never know what you surrendered for their benefit.
Yeah.
You had to give up your imaginary children. But don't worry, in the sequel movie, you'll go and kill people for the imaginary children.
Yeah. But
Okay.
at least in Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Wanda is the villain in that one. Until she
she is the villain, but he is
end.
not allowed to overcome her because he's a white male.
No, she kills herself.
She goes to the
realizes
Illuminati.
what she's done wrong and kills herself.
She goes to the Illuminati in a parallel dimension, who are the superheroes of that world. She kills them all in order of their privilege, starting with the white men and ending with the black woman. And the black woman is the only one who gives her a contest.
That's a good point. I didn't notice that, actually.
You did or did not?
I didn't notice that. That's a really good point.
Doc Strange cannot hurt her, but Wong can, at least hold her at bay. Then then when the Latino daughter of two lesbians upraids her, she realizes her misery and collapses a cliff on herself.
Did you see Multiverse of Madness?
No, I'm just taking this from the clips I've seen.
It was
from the reviews I've seen. I will never see Multiverse of Madness. You couldn't pay me to see it because I'm a Doctor Strange fan. The reason why woke kills the Muse is because woke makes you the enemy of the Muse.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because the Muse serves the original story. When the Muse visited Aeschylus or Euripides to write Prometheus' story, he didn't have a story where Prometheus gets off the mountain and doesn't get his liver eaten by the vulture. Okay, everyone in the audience knew what was going to happen in that story. That's the way myths work.
Yeah.
Everyone who went to a Shakespeare play were not on the edge of their seat wondering if Henry VIII was going to end up as king or not. Okay, they knew how the story ended. That's not what the story was about. The story was about the execution of the story. It was not about cheating the expectations of the viewer. The way you cheat the expectations of the viewer is you invite them to go see The Last Jedi, and they're expecting a good movie, and they don't get it. Their expectations are cheated. Now, why do they do this garbage? Why do they do this way? Because they think they are fighting a crusade against you. They think you, the viewer, are the enemy, that your ideas are the enemy of the revolution. And the revolution, their idol, their god, which is them, requires them to break all rules. But you can't tell a story without rules any more than you can drive the car without the highway code. You can't drive on the left and the right, both directions, at full speed while stopped, and unbuckle the safety belt and go through the guardrail because it's keeping you back. It's holding back your creativity.
Yep.
No, that's nonsense. That's madness. Okay?
Yes.
So what happens to the woke is the woke confuses himself for reality. He becomes a narcissist. He doubles down on his narcissism and thinks that artists are supposed to tell you about himself. He thinks the world is fascinated with you, the poet. Everyone wants to hear about me and my problems, about what I was thinking. No one cares about you. I'm sorry. Okay? I don't care what Shakespeare had for breakfast. I don't care what his personal life was like. I want to see Macbeth. I want to see Hamlet. Okay? I want to see Love's Labor Lost. I want to see Twelfth Night. I don't want to see you give me a political lecture because of A, I know more about politics than you, and B, you don't know nothing. You can't even talk in a coherent sentence. And you certainly can't talk about politics using imagery if your images aren't reflecting reality. You can't portray a strong female character because A, you don't know what a strong character is, and B, you don't know any females. Okay?
Well,
so don't give me your woke agenda because you can't tell it. And you certainly can't tell it using epical, iconic characters as are found in comic books. Those things are the closest thing we Americans have to myths. Superman is a mythic character. He's larger than life. He's like Achilles. Okay, he's Hercules.
I would note
you can't treat epic characters in a quotidian, pathetic way. They don't work that way.
Yep.
You have to treat them with a certain amount of respect, the kind of respect that children will pay to Children will take stories more seriously than grown-ups will, and for a good reason. There's more of life bundled up in a story than is in a newspaper. Newspapers only talk about the surface appearances. They only talk about the facts. The facts is not where the story is. The story is at the heart of the story. The story is in the myth. The facts are merely the incarnation of the eternal myth. The way it's happening now. The eternal war between good and evil happens every year, but now it's happening in a certain way in America, and you can read that in the newspaper. But if you want to read about the real war, you got to read something else, maybe scripture. But you can deal with a comic book on your way if you're, if you want to make it simple enough for a child to understand. So that's why the Muse is killed. That's why the Muse is killed by the woke.
You touched on something else that occurred to me. People always say, "Why don't these people just create their own characters? Why do they have to take these iconic characters and twist them and corrupt them into these parodies of what they formerly were?" And I know the answer. They can't.
What is the answer, pray tell?
They have tried. They have tried making their woke superheroes. Nobody will buy the books. They've tried telling their woke. They've tried to do woke versions of these things, and they work even less well than Christian versions of rock bands and other just horrible, horrible things like that, where they can't create these things. They have to deface something else because they've tried and they can't do it. They're incapable. So they're incapable
because they can't tell a story.
They can't create.
There's a second reason you're overlooking, though.
Okay.
It's not the whole reason.
Well, okay.
You want to hear the second
Sure.
reason? They need to pull down a monument. You can't pull down a monument of Jefferson unless there's a Jefferson. You can't pull down a monument of Washington unless there's a Washington. You can't blow up Mount Rushmore unless there's a Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
So you have to take what is already in the public consciousness, in the public mind, the things we admire and like, John Connor, Doctor Who, Captain Kirk, Luke Skywalker, particularly Luke Skywalker, because he has faith even that the devil can be redeemed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because Darth Vader is basically the devil. And the Dark Father can be saved. His soul can be saved. And they have to say no. The real Luke Skywalker is a guy who drinks green milk on an island and sulks and can be beaten up by a girl.
Mm.
That's the real Luke Skywalker. And he dies. He dies by sitting on a rock and disappearing.
Yep.
That's tearing down. That's graffiti.
It is.
They can't draw. When they try to draw, all they draw is garbage. And so they have to draw graffiti on the Mona Lisa. They have to draw a mustache on the Mona Lisa. And that's what they're doing with these movies.
Oh, I agree. And yes. And it's costing them billions of dollars. Billions and billions of dollars.
Look, I would take a monetary loss to... Look, I'm a religious man. I would take a monetary loss to spread the doctrine of Christ because I believe Christ will save you. So I'd be willing to serve my religion.
They're doing the same thing.
The followers of the devil are willing to serve his. They don't care about the money any more than I do.
That's true. I was going to say, yes, they can't create because they take after their father below, who cannot create either. The devil can't create anything.
All they can do is mar and mock.
Yes, they can only corrupt.
They can take an elf and turn it into an orc.
Yes.
Right?
But they can't make.
So they can't make a new Thor, but they can make a She-Thor. They can make a Sylvie. They can make an Agent Carter and a She-Hulk and a Riri and a Shiri and a Layla. And even those characters are not original to any of them. They were in the comics first.
Well, they were corrupted by a previous generation of the same Morlocks.
Right. But notice what's also true for all those characters. None of them has an origin story worth telling.
No.
Everyone knows the origin story of Spider-Man, right? Because he didn't use his power for good and he got punished for it.
Yep.
And the death of his uncle is on his conscience. He's driven by the Furies the way Oedipus is, the way Euripides. I can't think of Agamemnon's son now. They're driven by the Furies. They're driven by their conscience. Spider-Man is. But what was the origin story for Kate Bishop? She liked Hawkeye. She wanted to become an archeress.
Yeah, basically.
What's the origin story for Captain Marvel? She was in an explosion. An engine blew up.
They have an origin story in the movie. she was picked on
Yeah,
and
she
wasn't
was in
allowed
an-
to
she
play
was in an
baseball because
explosion.
she was a girl, and then got powers from an explosion. But her backstory is she was picked on and not allowed to play in all the reindeer games. Wait, that's Rudolph.
Well, someday Santa will ask her to guide the sleigh.
Maybe. Who knows?
Look, Rudolph is still a good story. These guys could tell good stories if they wanted to. They could have made Kate Bishop interesting.
Probably.
I don't think they could make Riri Williams interesting no matter what, because she's someone who stole Tony Stark's tech. Her origin story in the comic, canonically, is that she wanted the teacher to tell her she was oppressed. She wanted her first grade teacher to tell her there was something she could not do. And the teacher refused. And the teacher said, "You can be anything you want, child." And she says, "No, you have to tell me there's someone I can't be." And she said, "Okay, you can't be Tony Stark." And so she said, "No, I will be Tony Stark." So she stole an Iron Man suit and reverse engineered it.
That's almost as bad as Lex Luthor's original origin story, his hatred of Superman because he went bald. Because Superman did something.
As a bald man, I think Lex Luthor's origin story is completely understandable.
Fair enough. But, it's...
And but the Muse is killed off by being woke. Because for one thing, the Muse has a sense of humor, and woke people
They
never
do
have a
not.
sense of
Well,
humor.
the communists had the same problem. Well, perhaps it's probably exactly the same problem.
They're the same people. Woke is another word for communist.
That's true. But the communists tried to tell stories, but they were hemmed in by the fact that you can't tell stories because you can't tell an interesting story because you can't make communism look bad. So your story
Right.
has to be how this is perfect and wonderful and the right way
And
to
it
go. And characters have
have
to overcome things.
And it can't have a character arc.
No.
It can't have a things start good, things get bad, things get recovered.
Yeah.
That's the hero's journey. That's the basic story arc.
Hmm.
And if you're woke, you can't have that.
Because
you're perfect.
Well, your character can't
Because a
get
woke
hurt.
person is actually only really ever talking about himself. And nobody cares because he's never done anything. So shut up.
He's boring. Yeah.
Okay? You're boring.
The characters are omnicompetent and wonderful, and it's not an interesting story because
Right.
Captain Marvel is boring because she can't be hurt effectively. She's
Right.
not really in any danger.
But a real omnicompetent character like Jesus Christ is interesting, and maybe the most interesting stories ever told, because he doesn't use his powers just to pat himself on the back, does he?
No.
He heals the sick.
And saves
He
us all.
raises the dead.
Yep.
Okay, who do these people ever help? They're supposed to be superheroes.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be stopping criminals. I don't see that. So
Yeah.
that's why. So that's why Marvel Phase 4 sucks.
Mostly,
They had the best franchise in the world next to maybe Star Wars. It was worth billions. Everyone loved them. Everything they made, people were panting for.
and they ruined it.
And now
They
you
threw it
could
away.
not pay me money to go see any of their garbage. I don't trust them anymore.
Nope.
They insulted me. They drove me away. And when they made crap, they told me it was my fault
Maybe they
for being a bigot.
will they.
Oh yeah.
Will they write?
Like liking good stories is bigotry.
Well,
Shut up.
Do you think they'll write this? Do you think they will right the ship in phases 5 and 6, or you think it will continue into the ditch?
I believe that if there is a miracle, and I mean a supernatural event, they will change themselves. But I think they did it deliberately to themselves because they're motivated by a philosophy that controls their life and controls their artistic vision. If they did a thorough house cleaning, if they repented in sackcloth and ashes, and if the muses came down from heaven and zapped them against their will, they could change. I'd give them a chance tomorrow. If they put out Spider-Man No Way Home again, I'd go watch it. But they have to stop insulting me.
Yeah.
They have to stop talking about themselves, and they have to stop complaining about things that aren't real problems. Okay? Racism has never been a problem in the Marvel Universe. Never. The Black Panther comes from the 60s. They've had black superheroes since for longer than I've been alive. Okay? They've had female superheroes back from like Nilvia of the North in the 30s. Okay? So don't give me this garbage. So, I don't think so. I don't think that there's any earthly way they can pull themselves out of their funk because they're doing it deliberately and on purpose.
Fair enough.
But I also believe in miracles. I also believe that the supernatural can intrude into the natural world. So I will just say there's no natural way they're going to solve it, but the supernatural might affect something.
God has a sense of humor and may drive them to repentance.
Or he may elevate someone else to fill the void. There are independent comic books that are coming up that are trying to avoid these horrific errors.
Well, that feels like a good place to end. So thank you again for joining me this week, John.
Well, thank you for joining me. Adios.